Morning about bringing crimes to the forefront, the ways that society does this. Now, in my own case, I didn't really address the crimes that happened, were the molesting crimes that happened to me when I was a child. And the reason I didn't talk about it to my parents was there were other factors involved that I thought it would be more damaging to the family to bring them out, to try to let my parents take care of this. I didn't think, my father was somewhat involved. He wasn't a molester, but he was way too involved for, in other words, he was hiding a factor himself that which I call the shadow man problem, where he had married late in his 20s, and he continued on with what I perceived as relationships with males outside of the marriage. And my mother was much younger, and she didn't seem to recognize this. And the reason why I recognized it is because of the molesting. It was such a shocking, extreme. It wasn't painful, but psychologically it was very scary and horribly upsetting. And because the man was older and I was really young, 5.
How old was he?
He was like up in his 40s, kind of ugly and scary.
And how old were you?
5 years old. So this
See, if somebody would have done that to me.
Well, yes, but your circumstances were different.
Well, you thought this guy was your daddy's boyfriend.
Yes, and I thought the family wasn't going to be able, I didn't even think the community could take that in. I mean, they were used to hiding this kind of thing. My dad certainly wasn't the only one. There were others, but this was something that was, you're never supposed to talk about such things. And, I didn't think at 5 years old that I was able to bring this out. And I thought it would it just stupefied my senses. I just couldn't even put words to it. But yet it was there and it was troubling me. And so all my whole life I had to spend thinking about this problem. And just now, I'm 79, I'm trying to bring it out. And people are objecting and they are not seeing it. But now I think I've got to do it before I die so that some of my conclusions and some of my thoughts on this kind of complex problem where there's molesting going on with other factors that you can't talk about. I'm trying to do my part in trying to talk about those things. Talk about the shadow man, because men are powerful, and that's one reason why these type of things have been suppressed. They haven't talked about. And so you've got to be very strong. You've got to be persistent in order to get this kind of a discussion and problem out to the public and, try to get it into the public consciousness saying, now, and I think these men are tortured. I think people are tortured who are married and who find themselves still or addicted to, to the company of their own sex, and they're trying to hide it. And even now, I think that sometimes this is not something that people can bring out, that it would be too damaging to the family, so they have to kind of keep on suppressing it and trying to deal with it in other ways besides talking about it. And so sometimes I would say that incest which didn't happen to me, I mean, I thought that I was coming pretty close with my father that much involved, but he didn't actually do anything to me
What?
directly. Well, to have this molester come in a situation that was too close to the family and expose his children to such a man and not even think about whether he was dangerous or what he was. And he did that all too often in the years that he was married. He was always bringing somebody around that he was drinking with and exposing us children to his own drinking as well as theirs. And so, but I'd say that incest in the family is another very, very difficult, because it could just destroy the family so completely that a lot of times it's like contained within the family, and then the people try to deal with it, you know. Don't think that there aren't a lot of crimes that go undetected, because there are. But families have to deal with them. They have to contain the people in their family that they know are dangerous. And this has happened for thousands of years, that people have not thought that it was a good thing to bring out something, so they would suppress knowledge of it, but yet they would try to take steps to minimize the damage that's going to be done to the people. Yes?
May I just interject one thought here?
What?
There are many families, and I can, well, we used to call them hillbillies.
Mm-hmm.
But they're, that came over here, had nothing, knew nothing, weren't educated, went out into the hills or coal mines they never considered incest as being anything other than increasing the size of your... See, there you go again. As soon as we make a comment like that, some idiot calls on the telephone.
Yeah.
Well, this guy says, is this person a relative of yours? He says, what you talking about? Everybody's a relative around here.
Yeah, well, and a lot of times, if someone in the family was destructive, then the rest of the family would sort of gather around and figure out the best way to try to contain this person, and everybody would be watchful. But they wouldn't go and to the police officer and say, Uncle so-and-so is doing this.
Well, one of the reasons is the police officer is one of their relatives.
The nieces is bothering the nieces because this could cause greater suffering to the family. That's
I like this when they're having a family reunion, and so this having children. Bud's talking to Kelly. Kelly says, "I got to go to the family reunion." He said, "Well, the last time you were there, they said, why aren't you married? You got a perfectly good brother at home."
Uh-oh. Well, come on.
Well, lighten up, will you?
Yeah, well, here's someone who is retarded, is improper in the family, but they would, you would try to take cautions around this person.
Yeah. Keep them out there mowing the grass all the time.
Like
in the wintertime.
Well, I remember we had an old uncle who the kids would, he would let them drive his car if they sat on his lap and gave him a kiss. Well, he was quite old and feeble, so this didn't seem to threaten them too much, but they'd go, Uncle George, I had to kiss Uncle George so I could drive the car.
I wasn't too keen on kissing my grandmother either, believe me.
So,
but not on the lips. No lips.
So sometimes, this
that mustache of hers
uncle would get carried away, and he would be doing things. Well, if you look back into his early life, he could have been downright dangerous and could have done some crimes that couldn't be laughed off. But I can recall that we just kind of contained this old guy. I mean, nobody was going to have him, he was just regarded as kind of eccentric and, a little more, unpleasant thing to have to deal with. But, so, man, man has ever since he came into existence, has tried to figure out the best way to handle a problem that erupted within the circle of families and community and even towns and
Can I just throw this out for a minute?
and
Think about this thing that the Jewish Old Testament, right? Adam and Eve, right? They've got 2 sons, but yet, how did they keep propagating, you know? Especially when one killed the other one, see? Something's a little fishy in that story there.
Yeah, well, you studied the Bible, so you know that there's a lot of. You had to wonder, you had to fill it in sort of yourself. I mean, I say, well, this is a limited story, an unlimited explanation, maybe, of what happened that people like to tell and enjoy. But my point is that doesn't mean that we don't need to try to surface criminal behavior when we possibly can, when it looks like it would be good for us and good for the community to try to deal with a problem. And sometimes, the way that how slow the courts move, how difficult it is for police sometimes to figure out who committed the crime or whether a crime, we still have to try to do that in order to maintain order. And, in other words, people have to be made examples of, because we know that there are people who get away with crimes that other people are prosecuted for and maybe even serve prison terms, long ones, for something. It looks like it's very unfair, but still it needs to be done in order to not only try to restrain people that are very destructive in the community, but to send an example to the other people that we haven't caught you, but this is what's in store if we do. So I think that we can't always think that because we haven't got somebody arrested that we aren't supposed to try to contain them and keep them from doing harm right within the family circle, because we do have to. I know for years, me and my sisters would have to contain our dad when he got drunk from going out and killing some people, and which he could very well do.
All right, let me ask you this.
What?
How many did he actually, that you know of, that he killed?
Well, I do know that he hit a car head on when he was dead drunk, and he could have killed everybody in the car.
Yeah, but did he threaten that car and say,
No, but he did the damage. And he got so drunk he drove on the highway, and that's what we have to contain drunk drivers for. No, they don't set out to kill anybody, and they're just as shocked that they killed somebody as probably. But we have to hold them responsible for the state that they got into, where they caused a death, and that's what we would always be trying to keep our dad from doing, is causing terrible damage to somebody. And so we had to be watchful. We had to sort of police his behavior. And no, that is a common thing.
But he loved that to death, didn't he?
Well, he didn't like it, but he relied on us to keep him from getting into trouble. I mean, many a family has had a family member that was always getting into trouble, so everybody had to cooperate and try to keep this family member from really doing something bad.
Well, how come I never knew families like that? What did I miss out in life? Was I too close to the city? Did I have too much education? Was I too civil? I mean, what happened?
Yeah, too much of the wrong kind of education, I guess.
I just don't know. I mean, I don't know of anybody in their family that we had to gather around and straighten up. I mean,
Well, we had big families, and if
Well, they're
there's
more like-
drinking,
they're
if
more
there
like
is problem
tribes up in that
drinking,
part of the
if
country.
there is always an occasion for the rest of the family to be involved in trying to contain that person. Maybe your family didn't realize that you needed to be contained. Anybody that drinks on a regular basis, they have the potential of causing a lot of damage. More damage than if they were sober, for sure. So, and I was going to say that if anybody, knows or suspects or feels like there's criminal behavior in their own family, and they feel so far from being able to do anything about it, that they can't really take it to anybody. This is very common. This is
Where in your
What?
part of the country?
anywhere
I don't know where
where
it's so common.
well, when I was growing up, that was very common because
Yeah, but that was
people
70
were
years
not
ago.
part. There was not law officers. Well, anymore, even now, our law officers, we can't even afford that many law officers. So
Who said that?
law officers, yeah, because there's been cuts and cuts.
Yeah, but they haven't been cutting
But
the officers.
what? Oh yes, they have. They've been cutting everything.
Who's they?
The state. So the states are the less money they have, the more they have to cut all the services. Then that means catching criminals. So
Molesting
it
little
just
kids?
has to happen. It just happens, and the more they cut, the more the general populace has to take up the slack. They have to think about how to prevent themselves from
Well, I
becoming
think we all should
victims.
carry firearms.
Well, that might not necessarily do it.
We'll read our
That might
paper.
not be the best way to contain.
This has got to be one of the
contain
most
crimes.
mentally retarded states of the Union, and I thought West Virginia and Kentucky were bad, but now
Oh,
we wanna
come on,
give-
come on.
give kids
Just don't.
guns on campus?
Just don't.
What in the hell is going on?
Well, that's it. When people feel that there's lawlessness all around them,
They're so
that's
all
when
right
they
now.
tend to want to carry
It's a
guns
bill.
and
Let
do
the
things
kids
like
carry
that.
guns on campus so they can shoot
But
each
the
other.
whole purpose of this video for me is to try to encourage people not to think that just because they haven't been able to go to the law about a crime that they know about, that doesn't mean that they're not dealing with it, that they can't deal with it, that they can they can extend their circle of talking about it within the family and trying to get closer to the family. I think the families that are the closest and that communicate the most are the ones that are able to stop any kind of behavior in the family it's the isolated people, the ones that don't have family, the ones that don't have extended family to care about them, that get into bigger trouble. So it's like if you have members of the family that don't seem to be part of the group, the best thing to do is try to figure out ways to get to them, because to me communication is one of the biggest deterrents of crime there is. If people feel like they're being watched and they're being observed, that is a big deterrent to crime. That right within the family there can be expressions of interest and of keen observation about what might be happening, and trying to convey to the people, to restrain themselves, to figure out the very best way to handle something that may be serious, maybe a serious crime, or maybe a serious problem, but how do you handle it when you know that law enforcement is not going to get involved, that is not a possibility at the moment, just because it's perceived by the ones who are, you might say, are the victims, that would be too damaging. Just like me, you know, when I was a child, I thought this family has to survive. This family and my father has to survive, no matter if he's a drinker, no matter what he is. I mean, other people that act like, oh, he should just commit suicide, and you know, I say no, that was not an option for me. If you have a suicidal father, him committing suicide is not what you want, and that's another crime. Another crime, suicide, murder of the self, which is going to rob the family of a lot of benefits.
Like money?
Yes, money, help, support. And I think sometimes when we have a lot of suicides, that we're not doing a good enough job of valuing that person and trying to convince them that suicide would rob the world and their families. In fact, we've had some terrible crimes committed in connection with suicide. The father would decide to kill the kids. Well, that is the worst possible scenario when a suicidal father. See, when you let suicide get too deep into the solution, people keep thinking that the solution is suicide. You may have some other people pulled into it.
12 hours of Academy Awards, right? 12 hours the other day.
Yes.
Watched it for 12 hours. Now, when they give them an Academy Award and they start thanking this and thanking that, what do they do in the background?
What are you doing? Oh, fade out. He's giving me a gentle tip. Okay, well, I don't know whether this is going to be helpful to anybody, but I hope so.
It's been helpful to me, believe me.
Oh, I'll bet.
And that's all it counts.
He doesn't think too well on these subjects, but we try. And I try to contain him when he says something that I find totally irrelevant.
That's right. When you contain somebody, it's known as jail.